Story 1. My sister and I dressed up as Zatanna for a convention. A man asked to take our picture together. Our breasts accidentally touched and he outright moaned. Joke's on him. I'm flat-chested, so my breasts were padded with socks. Story 2. The plague doctor's mask bent and his goggles fogged up. He fell too many times. Story 3. Pyramid head. There are many reasons this design is impractical. It is very hard to move, see, eat, or drink while wearing just the helmet. Add a skirt or dress-like lower section and the large sword and it becomes even worse. Walking is uncomfortable, sitting is difficult, and if the weather turns cold, there is no way to put on something warm that does not look completely ridiculous. Story 4. Bison. My costume caught on fire when I got too close to a heat source and severely burned my legs, lower back, and buttocks. Story 5. I used three-dimensional printing to make an entire Iron Man armor. Took forever to print just the arms, and they look terrible. Edit. Well, this post took off. If you find this post, the final product is shown in the images. The forearms on the left in the last picture are glued together and represent the final product. Story 6. Portraying Ryuk or any Shinigami in Death Note required a lot of work for people to believe you were from Kiss. Story 7. Not exactly cosplay. I went to a Halloween party as Waldo once. It was a terrible idea. Everyone wanted me hiding in the back of their photos, and people kept saying, haha, I found you at least 800 times. Never again. Story 8. I chose Professor X only because I had torn my lateral collateral ligament and still wanted to attend the event, so I rented a wheelchair to get around. Many people came up and sat in my lap, thinking I was cosplaying as him. Fortunately, my friend's parents lived nearby, and we grabbed ice packs to put on my knee so people would stop. Story 9. Slender Man. I got really into the craze back in the day. Being a 6'3" skinny guy, I thought highly of myself for having been a Marble Hornets fan long before the game was released. The problem was that I have a large head and nose, so through the morph suit you could still see all my features, including my dark brown hair and flattened nose. I ended up with a sore nose for days, and the soles of my morph suit became extremely darkened from walking around in platform boots for hours on end. Story 10. Daft Punk. I decided to use a privacy screen for the display and could not see more than about 3 feet in front of me at certain mathematically significant angles, and no visibility at other angles. Story 11. Dr. Roxo. Nobody wants to see that. The real reason is that, while it is fun, I have nowhere to put anything. No pockets or place to store cash or identification. If it is cold, forget about wearing it. I kept the costume screen accurate with no kid-friendly alterations, and I wore it to age-appropriate events. Edit. Okay, I may bring it out this coming year. There seems to be enough positive response to warrant it. Story 12. Goku. Back in college I had long curly hair. A girl who was amused by it straightened it and used hairspray to get it to stick straight up. Then I used black spray on it. It was so big that I would have been better off going Super Saiyan. After college I chopped my hair, so it was impossible to do it justice again. Story 13. I wore the graffiti skin for Tracer from Overwatch. Paint kept transferring from the gas mask onto my face, and my mask was literally dripping water from my breath. It was hot, stuffy, and gross. Edit. I do not know how to add pictures on mobile, but I am pretty sure I have some further down my Instagram feed. Story 14. One of the 300. I will never be in that kind of shape again. Story 15. Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. I am a bodybuilder and have a shaved head, so why not? I could not breathe. My lungs did not care who I was until I took off the mask. Story 16. I dressed up as the robot unicorn from the Flash game and was hit on by 5 French men. I am a straight man. There was glitter everywhere. Story 17. I was a recruit in Rainbow Six Siege. Everyone thought I was a terrorist, so I had to leave. Story 18. I cosplayed Faye Valentine from Cowboy Bebop. It was not because of awkward male comments, but because other female cosplayers would come up to me and say that Faye is a good starter cosplay because they assumed it was not intricate enough. I grew tired of the condescension. Story 19. The Stormtrooper costume was custom made to fit me, and I was very uncomfortable in it. It was hot, and I could not see. I would be lucky to come out of it without injuring myself. Story 20. I wore the Darth Vader costume for years in 2-hour stints. The vision is awful and no skin is exposed, so it is very hot. There is a lot of wiring for lights and sound, so there is always something that can and does go wrong. Many children come up and randomly press the buttons on the chest. The cape is also hard to control. Now I keep it permanently displayed on a 6'5" mannequin. Note: I clarified that this is not the wrestler by adding the name Darth. Story 21. I use a wheelchair and 1 year I dressed as a Dalek. It was very popular and many people wanted pictures, but I could not fit through doorways and I kept bumping into people. Edit. Thanks for the award, even though you seem like a bot. Edit 2. I could only find 2 pictures which are not included here. The costume was huge because my wheelchair was large and it had to fit around all of its parts, then taper to be thinner at the top. It was a very fun craft project that took a lot of help and time, but in hindsight using cardboard was not the wisest idea because any moisture made it lose much of its stiffness. Live and learn. Story 22. I did a One Punch Man cosplay at Comic-Con. I shit you not. About an hour in, a guy playing one of the enemy characters from the first season, I believe the leader of the aliens who invaded in that huge ship, sprinted down the walkway and punched me square in the stomach as hard as he could. I unconsciously tensed my muscles, which absorbed much of the impact, but although I looked fine, I felt like both my lungs had collapsed and about 3 ribs had punctured my stomach. Story 23. I was Princess Zelda. I received a lot of compliments, but an uncomfortable number of men kept trying to flirt with me. It might have been even weirder if I were not a straight man. Story 24. I once went to a Halo convention as Church from Red vs. Blue. Midway through, a friend pretended to kill me. I felt so bad for him because everyone was screaming at him that he had killed Church and calling him a team-killing fucktard. If I ever do it again, I will claim to be Epsilon instead. Story 25. Lucy Heartfilia from Fairy Tale. The costume itself was not the problem. It is pretty simple to be fair, but it had other issues. Firstly, I have small breasts and the character does not. The number of people who mentioned this was astonishing. Secondly, the character wears a very short skirt, and I had a few older men follow me and harass me because of it. It was mid-October in the north of Scotland, so it was freezing cold. Thank you all for the support and for sharing your experiences. You are a good bunch. Story 26. Lord Business's head from the Lego movie, like the head of any Lego character, was too heavy and I could barely move. Edit. Okay, wow. I did not expect this comment to get so much attention. Thank you for the gold. Story 27. Snow White. I wore it to a major comic convention and people would not let me walk. Parents literally shoved their children into my arms and forced me to take pictures. Children flocked to me, and parents pushed each other to be first. I was trying to take the shuttle to the convention when a small crowd surrounded me and would barely move so I could get on. My boyfriend at the time had to yank me and pull me onto the shuttle because we almost missed it. The same thing continued on the shuttle when we got off walking to the convention, and at the convention. After 2 hours of this, I demanded we go back to the hotel so I could change and actually enjoy the event. The worst part was people shouting, "It is Cinderella! It is Sleeping Beauty! No, I am Snow White, dang it!" Story 28. Parents need to control their children at conventions. I've lost count of how many times kids have tugged at my cape or sneezed on my cosplay. It's infuriating. Story 29. I was dressed as No-Face from Spirited Away, at least until I went out in public. I was accused of racism, asked to leave the subway, and then taken aside by a very angry subway security employee. I had to frantically find a photo of No-Face to show him to avoid more trouble. In fairness, he became concerned and helpful and advised me to take the costume off before I got beaten up. My hometown has a large Arabic population, so I can see why they thought I was being offensive, given the black cloak, black paint on my arms, and the gold-painted pebbles in my hands. Story 30. Out of all the cosplays I have made, the most awkward is definitely Elma from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. I always wore her to summer conventions and my horn would fall off every time, but the worst occasion was when it broke off and left residual model magic on my forehead. Also, the fabric I used for the tail stained my backside blue. Thanks, Yaya Han. Story 31. Sailor Moon. I felt beautiful and powerful, but the groping and upskirt pictures, which they thought were so sly, were repugnant. Update. I am blushing. Thank you for the kind words and sympathy. I do not have any great pictures, but a photograph captures most of the details. Story 32. Shadow the Hedgehog. It was a mistake, and I do not think I need to explain further. Edit. Thank you for the gold. No, I did not do blackface for those wondering. Story 33. Edna from The Incredibles. I am a short gothic woman, and at the time I had the same haircut as her. I went as her for a Halloween party, and it's been my nickname ever since. Especially when I'm angry. I fucking hate it. Oh my god. My first popular comment is about my nickname and I'm freaking out. I hate it because I see the similarities between us, and it makes me mad because I wanted to be Violet when the movie came out. Thanks. Reddit. Story 34. Back when the Assassin's Creed games were in their heyday, I cosplayed as one of the assassins with a few friends who were also assassins. For example, one of us was Connor, one was Ezio, another was Edward. I spent a lot of time on those costumes and the props, so I have no problem saying they looked great. We got a lot of attention, including being stopped for hours at the PlayStation booth for pictures when a few other assassins joined and we had the whole family. The problem? I am a girl, and a short one at that. My friends who cosplayed with me were tall boys. So, at the risk of looking like a Funko Pop vinyl next to them, I had to wear boots with a significant heel to help give me some height. It was brutal. We only had tickets for one day, and it was hours spent on our feet in poses with frequent stops for pictures. The pictures were awesome. It made all the time and effort worth it, but I was in absolute agony. At one point, when we all took a bathroom break, I took off my boots and put my throbbing feet on the cold tile floor. Thankfully, some people who wanted pictures noticed I was in pain and out of costume and waited to take pictures until after I put the boots back on. I had to call it quits early and missed out on looking around as much as I would have liked. Even leaving the huge convention center was slow because I kept getting stopped. When I finally got back to the hotel and took my boots off, I had huge blisters on the tops of my feet and on my heels. It ruined the rest of the weekend for me. A couple of years later, I went as Lara Croft from the newer games and got to wear flat, grippy boots with a nice gel insert. It was heaven. Story 35. I dressed up in a pun costume that was a mix between Inspector Gadget and a go-go dancer. I was Go-Go Gadget. I had neon fishnets, string lights in my trench coat, light-up glasses, and other rave gadgets. I would not do it again because wearing Heelys for hours tore up my feet. Edit. Holy shit. This blew up. I went to work and came back to all of this. Most of you wanted to see the costume. I did not get many pictures, but I found a decent one. Story 36. I made a pretty great Solaire of Astora costume with real chainmail and armor. Holy shit. After 6 hours of wearing that heavy-ass metal, my back, shoulders, and arms were fucking wrecked. Edited wow first gold. Praise the sun. Story 37. Master Chief. Every Halloween at school I wore an over-the-top costume. For my senior year I wanted to go above and beyond, so I worked overtime to buy Halo 4 Master Chief armor. The problem was that the armor pieces were made of plastic, so I could not sit fully without breaking the thigh pieces. I had to squat over my seat instead of sitting in it. My legs were killing me at the end of the day. The costume was also very loud because the plastic pieces rubbed together. Now I usually go for smaller cosplay. This year I went as a vault dweller and I could actually move. Story 38. Widowmaker. I felt like my breasts were gonna pop out of that suit at any second. The body paint and tattoos were always rubbing off because of the suit and armor. Someone bumped into me, broke the end of my gun, and damaged part of my armor. It was so uncomfortable. Never again. Story 39. Any version of Harley Quinn. Nobody knows how to behave around a Harley Quinn cosplayer. Not thirsty fans, not Joker cosplayers who stay in character, not people who quiz you on your Harley knowledge, and not other Harley cosplayers who object to the version you chose or the accuracy of your costume. Every Harley I have met has been given hell for their cosplay for one reason or another. I only did the Lego version of Harley twice and got minimal grief, but I have met multiple Suicide Squad Harleys who were targeted online with encouragements of self-harm and pushed around at conventions by people who hated the character. Never again. Edit. Instead of just posting a cheesy thanks for the silver, I will expand on my experiences as a Harley Quinn cosplayer. I did 2 events as Harley, a convention as an attendee and Harley Quinn Day at a comic book shop as a paid performer. My costume was handmade, the wig was secure, and although it lacked the padded armor of the Lego design, the colors and wig were accurate. At the convention, there were not many problems. A creepy Joker followed me the whole time, invading my personal space and wrapping an arm around me. But I was not genuinely fearful because we were still in a crowd. A handful of people asked which Harley I was or critiqued my original design before I explained I was Harley from the Lego movie. It was not that bad. I had a worse time that weekend when I cosplayed a podcast character that nobody could identify correctly. Working the event made me stop wearing the cosplay. I worked alongside 2 other Harleys, meeting and greeting people coming in for Harley Quinn merchandise and taking pictures. We were promised $20 each for 3 hours of our time. That is not terrible. Most cosplay performers do it for fun and sometimes work events for free if they like the gig. The email said we could choose store credit or cash up front. Between photo opportunities, the other 2 Harleys told me horror stories. One had been posted on cringe pages, which led to people hunting her down to harass her and encourage self-harm, all because she cosplayed the Suicide Squad version of Harley Quinn. Some people are quick to call Suicide Squad Harleys fake fans or say they are not real cosplayers. The other said that while touching up her makeup in the convention bathroom, someone cosplaying the original Harley criticized her, saying she would never do the Suicide Squad version because it is trashy. At the end of the event, the comic shop owner stiffed us, giving each of us 3 $5 coupons. I had to show the email to prove he had offered cash. After all that, I was done with Harley Quinn. It is a shame. I splurged on the wig. Story 40. The lusty Argonian maid for obvious reasons. The costume was too much for me, and now I live my life making inappropriate Todd Howard jokes while dressed as a seductive Argonian. Story 41. Junkrat. Never again. The one time I went to a convention, I had my best friend as Lucio. The cosplay worked perfectly. I have a prosthetic hand. Amputee struggles laughing. A British accent that sounds Australian enough if I try, and I am 6 feet 3 inches tall. My friend had to keep people from touching my arm and asking if it was real. Once I got so annoyed, I took it off and waved my stump. The spray paint on the prosthetic was a pain to scrub off, and the wig was very itchy. There was a group there with other Overwatch characters, and we had fun taking photos. Story 42. Charlie Chaplin is often mistaken for another man. Story 43. I was cosplaying Nami from One Piece. I wore a bikini top and had a nip slip, which wasn't too bad. A man stepped in front of me, told me, and covered me while I fixed it. The problem is he then spent the next 2 days thanking me for the experience. One thank you would have been enough. 2 days was excessive. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Story 44. Hamilton. It turns out prop guns may resemble illegal firearms, especially dueling pistols. Story 45. Misa Misa from Death Note. No one knew who I was supposed to be. Very cold cosplay in early spring. Story 46. Not permanently, but I was Cars from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure at a convention this month, and I'm definitely putting that one away until the weather gets warm again. Story 47. Ariel. I love the Little Mermaid and the costume I made for her mermaid form, but it has become a cosplay that creeps have ruined for me. I literally had to use Pro's aid to attach my bikini top to my chest and wear pasties in case someone tried to rip it off. I have been groped, had hands stuck down the front and back of my costume, been kissed, and heard every sea-related dirty joke imaginable. I officially decided to stop after one incident at a local convention, where someone tried to pull off my top and I slapped him hard enough to throw him off balance. He fell into a water feature and hit his head. The police were called to determine whether it was self-defense or assault. I hung up my seashell bra and tail after that day. Update. This got more attention than I expected. Thank you so much for your concern and support. To answer questions, no, I did not press charges. I did not have the time or money, and I was so shaken up from injuring another person that I just wanted to forget it. I will not deny that I sometimes regret not pursuing it, but it is very hard to think rationally after something like that. The man was bleeding, and I was pretty sure I had broken my hand and injured his face. In the moment, I was scared I would be charged with assault and that filing a claim would have consequences for me. I cannot fully describe all the emotions and fears I felt, but those were my biggest concerns, along with cost. Another update. Apparently this was featured in a Reddit compilation video. I guess that is a new kind of internet attention. Please do not include people's comments in videos without consent. I was venting here, and now I am worried the person I mentioned might find it and track me down. Also, hi dude man from YouTube. This confirms that the person you interacted with was me. Story 48. I am never going to cosplay any male character who does not wear plate armor or something similar. Binding did not go well for me, even with a legitimate binder made for people who bind frequently, and I prefer to keep my lungs functioning. Story 49. Mystique. I was fully clothed and 17 years old, and the internet was creepy. I would do the Nigel Thornberry Sailor Moon cosplay again. Edit wow. I thought this comment would disappear toward the bottom of the thread. Thank you. I removed the image link. My favorite reaction to the Sailor Nigel cosplay was that one woman changed her husband's phone background to it while he was napping. I have no idea what happened when he woke up, but I like to imagine it was funny. Story 50. I was Batman. A kid pulled my cape, and it pulled off my helmet and back piece. They were part of a single piece of armor, and I couldn't put them back together. Story 51. I dressed up as the guy from Ghost with a shitty Pope costume and corpse paint for Halloween in Texas. I almost got my ass kicked by a drunk hick who was upset about the shooting in Pittsburgh that had just happened and overheard me making a joke about selling indulgences. It was a weird night. Story 52. Beast Boy. Maybe I will again, just not in San Diego in July. The face paint I was using was pretty good and held up until about the last hour. Luckily, I was wearing gloves, so I was able to touch things, but it was pretty hot and miserable. Story 53. Motoko Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell in her stand-alone complex full-body tech suit with Gore-Tex. I ended up getting heat stroke within the first 30 minutes and haven't worn it since. Edit. Cosplay photos for those asking. I am not at my desktop, so sorry for the low resolution. Story 54. Star Wars cosplay is frustrating. No matter what character you are, you will get someone who starts a conversation and goes in depth about why Disney ruined their childhood. If someone is expressing their passion for something, do not complain about its merits to them. Once I cosplayed as Kanan Jarrus, the Jedi Knight from Star Wars Rebels, and someone stopped me in a hallway at a convention and gave what I can only describe as a lecture about why Star Wars. The Clone Wars is better than Star Wars Rebels while I was dressed as a Rebels character. The same thing happened when I did a Rogue One cosplay as Director Krennic, where someone tried to convince me that Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith is better, despite my repeated attempts to say okay and bow out of the conversation. I am working on a Mandalorian cosplay now and already dreading what I will have to hear next. Let people enjoy things. Story 55. I dressed as Baymax from Big Hero 6. I usually do anime cosplays and never have to deal with a large suit. At the hospital where I was volunteering, I offered to cosplay. They chose my outfit. A plastic mask that covered my eyes slightly, and an inflatable suit that broke after 5 minutes. Down the street from the event was another Baymax with a perfect suit and a light-up screen. Needless to say, I was dying of embarrassment the entire time. Story 56. Never again will I cosplay full anime plate armor. I went as Gilgamesh from Fate Stay Night, all 3D printed, and spent 8 unrelenting hours trapped in a plastic cocoon. My skin could not breathe. I was pinched, seriously chafed, and covered in huge welts and blisters. On the way home, I turned awkwardly and the armor snapped. By that point, I had had enough. I took everything off, threw it in the nearest bin, and completed the rest of the journey barefoot in cycling shorts and a red cape. Story 57. A Titan. While I was covered, people assumed I was not and constantly hassled me. Whoa, this took off. Attack on Titan. Story 58. Vash the Stampede is one of my favorite characters of all time. The hair takes way too long to get right because I do not use wigs. I lost the gun prop I made and do not feel like making a new one. Story 59. Tifa Lockhart. I have never felt more unsafe and violated. I cannot count how many times I was groped or how many vile, rape-related things were said to me. It was not even one of her more revealing outfits. I did not feel comfortable or confident enough to wear those. I thought I would be safer being more covered up. Story 60. I created a steampunk cosplay. I made a belt of chains that wrapped down my leg and wore a corset and a gold half mask. The corset was a nightmare to get on by itself, and I had to make sure the chains did not break or fall off. Now I cannot remember how to get the corset on, so I gave up. Story 61. I made a version of Doug Ratman from Portal. It included a large companion cube with straps so it could be worn on my back. The cube was made of wood and was fairly heavy. Someone saw the cube and jumped on it to hug it without warning. They wrenched my back badly and did not let go when I shouted. I had to tell them they were hurting me before they released it. They nearly caused a serious injury. I also had to watch the cube whenever I turned around in public. The cube was roughly to scale with the game version in Solid, and I almost hit a few people with it. So no more large props for me, especially not ones people might dive onto and hug. Story 62. I, Link, turned around too fast with my sword sheathed and gave my friend a concussion. Story 63. Freddy Fazbear from Five Nights at Freddy's. Too many young children were bombarding me and being rude. I hated it. Story 64. This is not me. My cousin once cosplayed Meliodas from the Seven Deadly Sins, and someone threw a drink at him while asking him to use full counter. Story 65. I really like the costume and I am proud of how it turned out. It is probably my favorite. The Scarlet Spider outfit I made for the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo last year. The lenses fogged up so badly that I walked around the convention functionally blind, guided by my friends. I ended up taking the mask off and leaving it hanging around my neck when we reached Artist Alley, because what is the point of going there if you cannot see the posters and prints people are selling? If I can figure out how to solve the fogging issue, I might wear it again, but I will probably make a costume I can actually see out of next time. Story 66. I dressed up as the 10th Doctor for Katsucon a few years ago. I like Doctor Who, but I had not finished the 10th Doctor's run nor had I seen much of classic Doctor Who. I was berated by several fans dressed as classic doctors, whom I did not recognize. I learned that I will not dress up at a convention unless I know the franchise well. Thanks for the kind encouragement, everyone. Story 67. Characters that I do not know because a friend asked. I had an awkward conversation with real fans and was disliked very quickly. Story 68. Sailor Neptune. The number of perverted people who show up just because you are wearing a short skirt and cosplaying a lesbian character is alarming. No, I will not make out with my Sailor Uranus for you. Story 69. Violet Evergarden. I was very proud of the cosplay. I even managed to find an authentic-looking suitcase similar to the one she carried. My arm ached after carrying it all day because it was quite heavy. The heels were uncomfortable too. I made the mistake of wearing it when Fate Grand Order was at the height of its popularity. Everyone thought I was Saber. I will not wear it again until Fate Grand Order's popularity dies down. Even then, I am afraid I will not be recognized. Story 70. I dressed as a transformer that turned into the pink ice cream truck. I cannot recall the name. When I crouched, the headset flopped over my head and made the truck complete with wheels since I was wearing Heelys. I was part of a two-person team. I was the front, and my partner held my waist and formed the rear base. You could turn the headlights on and off by pressing a switch on my shoulder. Took me forever to wire those lights. And of course someone followed me around for an hour clicking what he called my boob lights on and off until they broke. A grown man, not a child. Story 71. My brother went trick-or-treating in an inflatable Tyrannosaurus Rex costume, and it was a mess. The tail dragged on the ground, so we had to keep picking it up to avoid tearing. The costume is huge, which made walking on sidewalks difficult and attracted children who wanted pictures. There was no ventilation, so he became extremely sweaty. If your child wants one, do not buy it. It is an expensive hassle. Story 72. Lieutenant Jim Dangle. Turns out police officers are fans of the show Reno 911 and want to take a picture with you. I like marijuana too much to have police officers stopping me every 5 minutes. Story 73. I once tried to cosplay as the purple guy from Five Nights at Freddy's, and my family kept asking why I looked like a purple crayon. One friend even called me a purple vibrator, so I decided never to cosplay him again. Story 74. I bought a Lynn costume from Fire Emblem, the Blazing Blade, and was excited to put it on, only to realize that you could literally see the top of my underwear and some extra skin above it from the slit on the side. I'm definitely too young for a thong, so I might have to wait a few years to wear that one. Rest in peace, over $100. Edit. I am surprised by how much advice I am receiving. Thank you to everyone who replied. I still have the costume lying around, so I will remember these suggestions for the future. Story 75. Knowing me, I will do it again because I love the character, but X-23 was pretty hard. My red-tinted goggles, delicate claws that broke halfway through the convention, and crop top earned me creepy looks and rude comments. Story 76. A friend of mine cosplayed Harley Quinn the same year the Suicide Squad film was released. She was groped by men who asked to take pictures because she closely resembled Margot Robbie and is naturally attractive. I was disgusted, and she was so upset and infuriated that she no longer wants to cosplay anything with even remote levels of sexual appeal. Story 77. Kibutsuji Musen because I am not Michael Jackson. Story 78. I performed as Dr. Frank N. Furter in the Rocky Horror Picture Show as part of a shadow cast for 18 years, so believe me, my costume was screen accurate. I did add a skirt because I did not want to bulge out and wanted to remain appropriate for a family-friendly convention. My makeup was in place when I arrived. It was a lot of fun at first. I received a lot of attention and got to strut around and give attitude. But after a while, keeping up the energy was hard. When I am cosplaying, I try to stay in character, and walking was difficult. High heels hurt after several hours. By the end of the day, I was tired and hungry. Eating would ruin the makeup, and the touch-ups looked pretty bad. I saw photos of myself appear online a few times after the convention with negative comments. That kind of hurt, since the photos were taken at the end of the day and I felt the same when I looked at them. I have also retired my gray Imperial officer outfit for two main reasons. First, it looked a little too Nazi, which was problematic. I can understand that in hindsight. Funny story about wearing it outside the convention. The musical Cabaret was playing at a nearby playhouse the day I wore the outfit because I went straight to the show after the convention with my wife. I loved the show and we went in costume. Bad idea. The 501st Legion does not allow it. The outfit is screen accurate, but some members of the 501st Legion criticized me when I wore it, either nitpicking parts of it or accusing me of pretending to be one of their members, which I never claimed. I thought about joining them, but the negative treatment I received from some members made me decide not to. Story 79. Jessica Rabbit. I do not know what it was, but for some reason, people really did not like seeing a grown-ass man in a red dress and lipstick. Story 80. I dressed as Bender from Futurama for 3 years in a row, but I don't think I will do it again because it was such a pain to see while wearing it. I could only see through the 2 tiny holes I made in the mask. I could probably have fixed that, but I was too lazy, and the head was easy to make. Because the bottom part was just long johns, the outline of my genitals was sometimes visible, and at a party a drunk man grabbed me because of that. Story 81. Sorry, I can't help edit or transform text that describes sexual content involving a minor. I can help in other ways. If the person was 18 or older, tell me and I will edit the text for TTS. I can remove the sexual and age-specific details and produce a neutral, TTS-friendly version. Example, Kanna Kamui. I experienced an incident of non-consensual photography. I can provide general tips for preparing text for Azure Text-to-Speech. Which would you like? Story 82. It wasn't a cosplay but a Halloween costume for a university party. I went as Two-Face as part of a group Halloween costume of Batman villains and went all in on the liquid latex face makeup. It looked grotesque. I was distinctly proud of myself. There was a guy from my course who I thought I was definitely close to who was also at the party. It turns out that fake horror burns are not exactly conducive to drunken makeouts, and he ended up going off with someone whose costume consisted of a corset, a pair of short shorts, and a set of cat ears. Me? Bitter? No, no, no. Story 83. Frank is a giant bunny rabbit. Turns out a furry onesie can get very warm when you walk around in it all day. Story 84. It was less of a cosplay and more a Halloween costume at a fraternity party. I was Misty from Pokemon, walking down a hallway when a guy called, "Hey, Misty, do you have a Brock Turner?" Brock Turner, the Stanford rapist, kind of soured my view of a costume I had been reusing for about 5 Halloweens. Story 85. Not cosplay, but I dressed as a Katamari in the late 2000s. I used one of those neck spheres that expand and contract, filled it with random objects and called it good. 2 pressure points hurt my shoulders, and no one got the reference. Story 86. I like anything from 90s anime except Evangelion or Pokemon. I cosplayed Yukio from Ranma a year or 2 ago at Anime Expo. Ranma was one of the first widely dubbed anime series, and Yukio is the protagonist's childhood friend. I put a lot of work into making the costume authentic, and only 3 people recognized me. It was almost heartbreaking. Story 87. A man in a trench coat was standing on the corner. I almost got arrested. Story 88. At a premiere, my lightsaber turned on during an emotional moment, and I was the only Jedi in the theater. Story 89. Flandre Scarlet. Do not get me wrong. It is probably my favorite one I have done so far, but I accidentally hit so many people while trying to walk around with those wings, and they are definitely not easy to manage in a convention setting. Story 90. I cosplayed Sans from Undertale. It was my first cosplay, and I made a papier-mâché mask with tights stretched over the eye holes. I have never been so sweaty and so unable to see in a costume. This was about 3 years ago. The mask is still structurally sound, and I still have it in my room. Story 91. Spider-Man. I made the mistake of wearing a skin-tight bodysuit and going to a Halloween party at a local pub. I was in good shape at the time, and this was during the early days of the Me Too movement. People grabbed my genitals and buttocks. Story 92. Princess Peach. It was so uncomfortable and hard to move in a hoop skirt. I was overheating and kept tripping over my dress. I couldn't even bend down. Story 93. Philia from Skullgirls. I worked for weeks on the wig. I removed a chunk of hair from the back and installed a felt armature to suggest the mouth, then smoothed and relayed the hair to make it seamless. I also hand-molded and carved the teeth. The night before the convention, my best friend accidentally spilled nail polish on it. Because the polish was light and the wig was black, I could not remove the stain. I wore it once and then hid it away until I was less angry with my friend. Story 94. Surprised I'm not seeing more Homestuck. Back in the day, though, I cosplayed Carkit, and damn did all the gray body paint get everywhere. No amount of setting spray would make you completely smear-proof through an entire sweaty day. I've heard horror stories about Homestucks hugging other cosplayers and smearing paint on them, or trashing hotel rooms and leaving gray paint all over bathrooms and beds. Story 95. Lapis Lazuli from Steven Universe, at least not the way I did it the first time. I had to paint a lot of my body blue, but the paint wasn't the non-staining kind. Everything I touched turned blue. Felt like I was melting into blue because it was so hot at the convention. Story 96. I dressed as Link and got the normal "oh hi" Zelda, which I found funny, so I laughed it off. I also had many nerdy guys question my dedication to The Legend of Zelda. They said things like you are not a true fan if you did not play their favorite Zelda game, and if I said I had played it, they would question every detail of the game to try to prove me wrong. A girl could dress up as anyone and still get harassed. Story 97. Dwight Schrute from the television show The Office. People thought I was interviewing for a new job. Laughing out loud. Story 98. I once saw a man cosplaying as the alien from the Alien vs. Predator movies. He wore a full rubber suit in what was probably 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit. I asked him if he did not feel hot, and he said, "I'm literally dying." He probably will not do that again. Note, he was cosplaying a xenomorph from the Alien franchise. Story 99, Reaper from Overwatch. I made a female version and it was awesome, but the armor was extremely bulky and the gloves prevented me from doing almost anything. The claws I had attached to the gloves did not sit on my fingers properly, so it always looked like my fingers were broken and the claws were hanging awkwardly from the top. People asked to touch my guns and became angry when I said no after others had broken parts of them. Story 100, Dva. I am a guy and the suit was not made for male anatomy. It did not have any pockets. The wig was a massive pain, especially since I am not used to long hair. It kept falling into my eyes, I kept getting hair in my mouth, and it became more and more tangled as the night went on. The worst part was using the bathroom. I had to leave the gloves and headset with a friend, remove and hang the wig, unzip the suit from the back, use the toilet, zip the suit, put the wig back on and adjust it, then put the headset and gloves back on. Story 101. When I was 22, I was in great shape and decided to wear a Spider-Man costume to a Halloween bar crawl. It was very form-fitting. More than half a dozen middle-aged women grabbed my crotch. I recognized that was blatant harassment. It is never acceptable for anyone to lay hands on another person that way. It did not affect me deeply emotionally. I was 22 and on active duty in the Marine Corps Infantry, so maybe my mental fortitude differed from most. I took it as a life lesson. The experience made me more aware of what a lot of women go through. From that point on, I changed how I approach and talk to women. It took that experience for me to open my eyes. In my defense, I had been on active duty since I was 19, and after being the biggest loser in high school, my romantic experience was nil back then. My mother raised me to respect all women. Story 102. Anything even mildly sexy or revealing has been ruined for me. For example, I was a bobblehead nurse from Silent Hill 3 with a latex prosthetic head, neck, and chest, all veined and grotesque. I wore oversized stockings to make my skin look like it was sloughing off. It is not like I am busty, so there was no functional cleavage, but some vendor kept trying to bribe me into taking off my face so he could enjoy the full view. At the very least, this takes an hour to apply. I am not taking it off so you can ogle me. I put work into this, and I am not taking it off for some figurine. Another example. I dressed as Grimrock Ray Ayanami from Neon Genesis Evangelion. It was basically a swimsuit with a high collar, thigh-high stockings and elbow-length gloves, plus a tail and cat ears. A man I did not know kept following me through the convention, asking if I would go to his hotel room. What are you doing? Let me enjoy wearing the design I worked so hard on. I do cosplay because I love the design, because there is something interesting about the character or the outfit I want to try to recreate. Why take that from me and make this about my body? My body is the least interesting thing to see here. Look at my fine stitching. I worked with latex. Can't my hard work be appreciated? Story 103. I dressed as Hatsune Miku for the first Comic-Con I attended when I was 10 years old. Many creeps tried to reach under my skirt, so I no longer wear skirts to conventions. By the way, sorry about my grammar. English is not my first language. Story 104. Nanako from Persona 4. Nothing was creepier than that cosplay attracting men. Story 105. This was not cosplay. I dressed up as Jesus Christ for Halloween in Oklahoma. It did not go over as well as I had thought. Story 106. Diavolo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I paint the black top by hand every time I wear it, and it usually takes 2 to 3 hours to prepare. Story 107. I dressed up as Jack Skellington only once, and I never understood why so many people wanted to hear me recite his lines. Putting on his trademark voice so many times made me physically sick. Story 108. Not me, but my friend is Chinese and cosplayed as May last year at a convention. Recently we went to another convention, but she felt it would be inappropriate to cosplay as May during the controversy, especially since she is Chinese. Story 109. I was Panther from Persona 5. Wearing that vinyl bodysuit in 31 degrees Celsius weather was not a smart move. On top of that, creeps were wolf whistling and people kept asking if I was Harley Quinn dressed as Catwoman. Story 110. For Hatsune Miku. A kid almost lit my wig on fire during a comic convention and the wig became stuck. The second was Nizu from My Hero Academia. His wig was cut so badly that a bald spot remained in the middle of his head. Fake friends are the worst. Story 111. Lady Sif. My helmet was very heavy, and the fur and layers were too hot for a summer convention. I may try to make a different version of her costume someday, but it would require much more detailing than I had expected. Story 112. Sparky, the plucky mechanic from Speed Racer. Right now you are probably thinking of the big guy with the red shirt and mustache. That is not him. That is Pops, the one who designed and built the Mach 5. I am talking about Sparky, the guy with a red hat and a yellow shirt who probably got the least airtime of all the main characters. I do not think he appeared in every episode. I put some work into my costume. I went to Michael's and bought a red hat and a yellow t-shirt that I spray painted an S on. I had a small wrench and a handkerchief. I went to a huge rave on Halloween and not a single person knew who I was. I was just a guy in a t-shirt and a hat. At least 2 people dressed as Speed Racer were there, and even they did not recognize me. So next time I cosplay, I will not go as a fairly obscure character who just wears regular street clothes. Story 113. I'll probably do this costume again, but not in this way. One of my favorite costumes is Jon Snow White. It is a Snow White costume with Jon Snow's cloak, sword, gloves, and facial scars. They have similar curly black hair, so my black wig is key. The last time I wore the costume I had recently moved and was healing from oral surgery. I had apparently lost my wig cap in the move, so I cut the legs off a pair of black pantyhose and used that as a cap. I was in horrible pain the whole time. I felt dizzy and my head and upper jaw surgical sites were in excruciating pain. It turned out I had used control top pantyhose without checking the package, and they were squeezing the life out of my head. I cannot imagine how anyone wears them on their stomach. Story 114. I refuse to dress as Deadpool ever again. I embody the character but hate the community, because you cannot go 2 seconds without someone running up to you and screaming about chimichangas or telling you that you are not a real Deadpool fan and that you are just hopping on a bandwagon. The worst part is that people constantly walk up and take pictures without consent. I'm fine with most photos when I'm not on my way to a panel or another event, but when I'm Deadpool people stop me everywhere. Once, a group of guys approached me while I was in the middle of a transaction in the dealer's room. They grabbed me and dragged me away from the booth because one of their friends was dressed as Rogue and they wanted me to help her in a sexual photo shoot by having her pretend to perform sexual acts with me. My ex-girlfriend watched in horror as they tried to convince me. They even offered me money to bend the other cosplayer over and simulate sexual contact with her. Fortunately, a group of friends doing a Naruto photo shoot in the dealer's room ran over to help. I immediately changed into regular clothes. Never again. Story 115. Reading these comments about female cosplayers being harassed scares me, especially after coming back from my first convention where everyone seemed so polite and respectful. I feel bad for all female cosplayers. Story 116. Any attack on Titan character. Seriously, the entire time I walked around, the swords kept hitting people. Me, my companion, and passers-by. The boots gave me blisters, although that might have been my own problem. The worst part was the harness. It took me 2 hours to put on, it kept slipping off my thighs, and it did not look right. People walking past were shouting Titans very loudly. I understand Aaron likes to shout, but could you please not shout at me? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.